Hello everyone and welcome back to UK Homicide. If you're new to our channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like and share to stay updated on cases that matter. Today's case is that of Paul Hansen, who was found with fatal wounds at home after an emergency call from his wife just 3 days after Christmas, on December 28, 2022. We will look at the chain of events that led up to the murder, any contributing factors, and the perpetrator. Paul and Teresa Hansen had been together since they were 16, having met on a college bus. 4 years later, they married and had 2 children, a girl and a boy. Paul was a construction manager, and Teresa worked as a hairdresser and had a small candle-making business. The Hansen family lived on Little London Lane in the small village of West Cowick in the East Riding of Yorkshire. This village has a population of only 1,000. About 10 years before his death, Paul Hansen suffered a significant head injury after being punched during a fight. This injury reportedly had lasting effects on his personality and behavior. Paul's drinking increased after the injury, which seemed to exacerbate tensions at home. Family members, including his son, we'll call him R, said his mom, Teresa, supported Paul through these challenges, but also talked of the strain the injury placed on their lives. Paul reportedly became irritable and verbally abusive in certain situations. On December 28, 2022, Paul Hansen, aged 54, was fatally stabbed by his wife, Teresa Hansen, also 54, in the kitchen of their home. The couple had been arguing while Teresa was chopping onions. During the argument, she claimed she pushed Paul away whilst holding a knife and unintentionally and accidentally stabbed him in the chest. In her 999 call at 7:05 p.m. on December 28, 2022, Teresa expressed remorse, saying, "I didn't mean to." Despite her call for help and emergency services interventions, Paul was declared effectively dead on arrival at Hull Royal Infirmary due to a single deep stab wound that pierced his heart. Paul and Teresa had been married for 34 years. The police investigation into Paul's murder by his wife, Teresa, reviewed the 999 call she made after stabbing him, in which she claimed it was accidental. Contrary to this, police forensics found evidence of an argument that escalated when Paul shouted at Teresa during dinner preparation. Teresa Hansen was initially detained by authorities under suspicion of grievous bodily harm. But when Paul was declared dead later that evening, Teresa's charge was escalated to murder, leading to her formal arrest. Detective Chief Inspector Nicola Burnett said, "We understand that news of a tragic incident such as this will cause shock and concern to people in the village and surrounding areas. However, I wish to reassure people that this was an isolated incident between people known to each other, and as such, there is no wider risk to members of the public. Officers will remain in West Cowick over the coming days, whilst we continue our investigation, and a scene guard will remain in place. Please come to talk to us if you have any concerns or information that may assist with our inquiries." The motive behind Paul Hansen's murder by his wife Teresa seems rooted in a long-standing tension between the couple. This is where we deviate from normal. Teresa Hansen's first trial started on June 12, 2023. It ended on June 22, 2023, when after 11 hours of deliberation, the jury failed to reach a unanimous verdict. Judge John Thackeray Casey discharged the jury and scheduled a retrial for September 2023. Prosecutor Alistair MacDonald, Casey, asked the jury, "Is she really expecting you to believe she failed completely to notice her husband, who must have been just a few paces away from her, was bent double moving away from her, dripping blood all over that kitchen floor? She didn't notice any of that. She just went on calmly cooking onions with the same knife. Is it credible that in his death agony, as he moved out of that kitchen, that he said absolutely nothing? He didn't sigh, groan, or gasp, didn't say, 'Teresa, what have you done to me?'" Teresa Hansen's defense in the murder of her husband, Paul, was led by Jason Pitter KC, who argued that the stabbing was accidental. Teresa claimed that during an argument in their kitchen, Paul walked towards her unexpectedly while she was holding a knife, resulting in him being stabbed. Teresa stated that she did not realize the knife had penetrated his body, and she continued chopping onions. She explained how she was unaware he had been fatally injured until she saw blood and he collapsed. Her defense emphasized that she did not intend to kill him and portrayed the incident as a tragic accident during a heated argument. They also emphasized that Paul had been verbally abusive, and this was worsened by his drinking. Alistair MacDonald KC for the prosecution stated that Hansen had intentionally harmed her husband. He questioned the plausibility of Teresa's defense that Paul had walked onto the knife, arguing instead that the stab wound could not have occurred accidentally, given its depth and positioning. After this second trial on September 21, 2023, Teresa was ultimately found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 9 years. This time the jury deliberated for just 3 hours. Judge John Thackeray KC, in closing, remarked that while Teresa did not intend to kill her husband, she briefly intended serious harm. He acknowledged Teresa's difficult circumstances, noting that Paul Hansen had been verbally abusive, especially under the influence of alcohol. However, the judge emphasized that this did not justify her actions. During the trial for the murder of Paul Hansen, the victim impact statement was delivered by R, the couple's son, on behalf of himself and his sister. R expressed that both sides of the family fully supported Teresa, referring to his father's death as an accident. He described the profound loss they experienced, stating that Paul had been the rock of their family and that life had been completely changed since the incident. R also appealed for leniency in his mother's sentencing, highlighting the emotional toll the event had taken on their entire family. Teresa wept during this part of the trial as the statement underscored the tragedy of losing both a father and, effectively, a mother. Soon after Hansen was sentenced, the prosecution indicated that it would appeal against the 9-year minimum sentence, as they believed it should be increased. In 2024, a review of the case was undertaken to assess the prosecutor's claim that Teresa received an unduly lenient sentence. It was then down to the Court of Appeal to explore whether a possible appeal could be progressed further. An appeal can only be made if a sentence is not just lenient but unduly so, such that the sentencing judge made a gross error or imposed a sentence outside the range of sentences reasonably available in the circumstances of the offense. In February 2024, his appeal was rejected by the Attorney General's office, on the grounds that, quote, "the threshold is a high one and the test was not met in this case." The tragic murder of Paul Hansen by his wife, Teresa Hansen, raises questions around contributing factors. 1. Alcohol-related tension. Teresa cited Paul's increased drinking as a major source of tension. She reported that his behavior, including verbal and mental abuse, worsened after he suffered a brain injury years earlier. 2. Domestic conflict. While Teresa described Paul as verbally abusive, no formal reports of DV were mentioned. I could find no evidence of supposed support systems, such as marriage counseling or domestic abuse resources. 3. Mental health and support systems. Both Paul's brain injury and Teresa's emotional strain from the difficult relationship likely contributed to the tragic outcome. Again, I was unable to find any evidence that Paul or Teresa accessed any mental health services that may have helped manage stress, emotional responses, and triggers. In summary, while it's impossible to say definitively that the murder could have been prevented, early intervention addressing these contributing 3 factors may have helped diffuse the situation before it turned fatal. Ryan, Paul's son, said his dad Paul was a rock and a vital presence within the family. Friends and relatives reflected on how he was the core who kept the family grounded. His life was one of resilience and loyalty, even through difficult times. His children emphasized his lasting impact and deep love for him as they stood in support of their mum, Teresa. Details about Paul Hansen's funeral have not been publicly disclosed. Thank you for joining me today as we tell Paul and Teresa's story. Please let me know your thoughts about this case. Do you think Teresa's sentence of a minimum of 9 years was fair? Do you think Paul's head injury added to the family conflict? Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more cases. Take care, stay safe, and look out for each other. Until next time. Bye.